Hey, how's it going, guys? Today I want to do a probably not so quick video on a couple items that I got recently. So the first one being the WLMouse Miao. And so let's just start off with an unboxing of this. Quick look at the box here. We have this kind of like very felt-like material on top. It's very nice, very cute. Cracking it open, we get Weebart. Love to see it. But it's just like one of those things where it's like, thanks for buying from us. If you need help, feel free to reach out. We have the mouse itself, the 8K hertz dongle, and a separate 1K hertz dongle. One thing that I did notice about this, even though it is very, very cute, feels kind of cheap because you can just kind of, I guess it makes sense because some people don't have the clearance between ports, but I feel like they could have done a little bit more. Pulling the foam out here, we have two boxes. This one has a USB cable in it, and in this one we have a bunch of accessories. You can see that I took the bottom piece of this mouse off already. I've been using the mouse for a little bit now. So we have some grips, very cute. I think these go better with the like color matched ones where you have the black mouse with the kind of like pinkish purple accents and the pink accents, and the white one with the purple accents. We also have some full cover skates and some corner skates. A couple of alcohol wipes to apply those skates. I also have some dot skates. I don't know if these are normally provided because at the time this was purchased, WLMouse was having a thing where if you buy from them, you get a bunch of dot skates for like as an added bonus. We also have these grips here, which are in the shape of a paw that matches up with the side profile of the mouse. So you can see that there's little indents here on both sides. So these would go right into there. I didn't really find them super useful though, because with it indented, your hand already kind of like digs into there. So I didn't have any issues with grip. I guess maybe if your hands get quite sweaty, it can help. But for me, it didn't really make much of a difference, so I just removed them. Looking at the mouse here, we have a lot of cat details. So let me just turn this down. So we can see here that the cutouts are in the shape of a cat. On the scroll wheel, we have cat paws. On the side, we have more cat paws. And on the bottom, we also have another cat paw. I think this is really cute. I actually really, really like this. Couple interesting things about the bottom though is that there is no center skate, and also the section for the skates isn't like inset at all. It's actually level with the rest of the mouse, which I think is pretty neat because I feel like on most mice you find that the spot for the skates dips in a little bit, but here it's like pretty flat. I'm not going to get too into the specs of this mouse just because I feel like it's a little redundant at this point where we have so many good sensors. I think just like the general performance of it matters more. So this goes up to 30,000 DPI, not that you're ever going to use it. And also I think that's a little misleading the way they word that, from 50 to 30,000 DPI. The encoder is a TTC dustproof silver, and you also have the option of Omron Opticals or TTC transparent black dots. This is the version with the Omron Opticals. The side buttons are Omron blue dots, and the battery is 220 milliamp hours, which seems quite small, but it's actually pretty solid. Now, WLMouse also advertises this as a 31-gram mouse, but I believe that's without any skates. And also, with just how dense this mouse is, it actually doesn't feel super, super light. The material is magnesium alloy, and that is quite nice. It's a lot nicer than I expected. I thought it might be like cold to the touch if I didn't touch it for a while, but it's just very slightly like that. If I didn't know that this was a magnesium alloy mouse, I might actually mistake it for plastic. It genuinely does not feel very metallic or anything like that. It just feels like a textured plastic. So regarding software, this does have a web-based configuration tool, but that said, I think it's extremely weak. I think it's genuinely the worst part about this mouse. The way you have to make adjustments to the mouse is very odd, and also this is where the DPI weirdness happens. You have a key combination to change the DPI of the mouse, but it's in predefined steps. So let's say if you want 3000 DPI, you can't do that. You want 1000 DPI, can't do that. It's in very set steps. I normally use 3200 DPI for like my day-to-day, so that's perfectly fine for me. And I do know a lot of people also use like 800, 400, but there are also a lot of other people that use like 1000 or even say something like 1200. So not being able to get in there and finally adjust things, unless if I'm missing something, I think is a little bleh. In terms of performance, I don't really have any complaints about this. The clicks are very nice and crispy. I really, really like these. It's very nice. And the middle click is pretty easy to hit. The scroll steps, some of the scroll steps have a little kind of like crunch or rattle to them, but it's never actually bothered me. Side buttons are nice to hit. Like with just my thumb, I can hit both. Really no complaints about performance. On this mouse, I do have Obsidian Airs. I almost called them Obsidian Air Pros, but those are the skates that I used to use. Obsidian Air Dots. Very nice combination with this on a glass pad. One thing that I do want to mention though is that I did occasionally accidentally double click. Not that the switches themselves double click, they're Omron Opticals, that's extremely unlikely, but just with how light the press is, I have accidentally double clicked at times. With the clicks themselves, there's the tiniest bit of pre-travel, if you even want to call that pre-travel. You get the click, and a chunk of post-travel. So it's very, very responsive feeling, but for me, I have double clicked here and there a little bit. In games, not so noticeable, but when I'm like doing work, I guess, that's when I do tend to notice it a little bit more. I also did just want to do a quick size comparison here. I will also have the ELO shapes up just so you can have a look as well. But this is the Pulsar X2 V2 Mini, the Scyrox V6, and obviously the Miao here. You can see this mouse is much, much smaller than the other two. And even hump-wise, you can just like stack this on top. These two have a similar hump as far as I can tell. The Scyrox has a pretty big hump, so you can see it peeking through there. Something that I've noticed though is that for someone with small hands is that even though the mouse is very small, I can palm grip it. I often actually hold the mouse like this, where this little bit here is resting against my palm. Very comfortable. I actually really like that. There are times when I will force myself to use fingertip grip. That said, I'm probably the exception. My hands are very small, so being able to palm grip it like this, I don't think many people will be able to do this, but I don't know, just nice little bonus for me. Overall, this has been my favorite mouse to use. I think it's a lot of fun to use, and it just does everything that I want it to right. I will say it does feel quite dense for its size, like even though it's 31 grams minus skates, it feels pretty dense. So like these two mice, even though this one should be lighter, they actually feel in hand pretty similar. Anyways, let's talk about this mousepad. This is the Wallhack SP-004 or the Xraypad 4. And I do understand that the 5 is already out, but I think it's still worth talking about this because from what I understand, the surface is the exact same, just have some quality of life improvements on the 5, such as a thinner base, so the overall thickness is less. I think it's still worth talking about because the general performance should be about the same. So this is obviously the white version of this pad. And this clocks in at 43 by 49 centimeters at 0.4 centimeters thickness. And you do have a silicone base. I think the back is very nice. Lots of grooves in here, so you get that extra grip on your desk or whatever surface you have this on. And you have a logo on either side. I will note that it does smell a little bit, like has a bit of like a factory-ish smell, or manufacturing smell, I guess. But I think that's pretty normal. I've had kind of similar experience with my other glass pad, but just something to note. Doesn't really bother me, especially once this is actually on my desk, but when I have it flipped around with the silicone up, I can kind of smell it. Before I forget, in the box, of course, you get the pad, you get a cleaning cloth and a sticker. This cleaning cloth I think is really awesome. It has a little bit of tackiness, and so of course, like with a glass pad, the finest bit of dust or like grit from whatever can impact the pad's performance. And so using this cloth, just giving it a quick wipe down, actually really helps. It removes any like dust or debris on here. I think this cloth is amazing. In terms of performance of this mouse pad, I have been really enjoying it. It is a bit more textured, and so the friction overall is quite low. I find it pretty easy to do some tracking. I'm very bad at tracking, but I can do a little bit. And also micro adjustments, because you don't have that much friction there. You can just move it very slightly, very easily. One thing I do want to mention about this pad though is that because it has such low friction, it can sometimes feel icy. That's kind of what I felt with my Miao with the 4 Obsidian Air dots. And so I'm not a very good aimer, so I tend to tense up my arm quite a bit when I aim. And so especially during like clutches or tense situations, I've often overshot my flicks and stuff like that. Of course, this is my fault, but it is also part of the process of adapting to a faster pad than what I'm used to. And so, especially if this is something like your first glass pad, you might run into a similar kind of adjustment period. Another thing that I do want to mention about this pad is that it can be quite loud. Of course, if you're gaming like competitively, you probably have either in-ears or headphones on, so probably not a big deal. If you game with speakers or like flathead earbuds like myself, the sound of the pad can come through here and there. Let's cut to a quick sound test. Okay, so I'm going to be using audio from my phone to hopefully capture some of the nuances. And for this, just for a more like normal comparison, I'm going to be using my Pulsar X2 V2 Mini with just normal PTFE dot skates. From those recordings, you can definitely hear that the Wallhack pad is the loudest of the bunch by quite a margin, but I think that's going to be just a normal trade-off that you have if you're chasing speed. And for most people, I don't think it's going to be a big deal, especially if you're using those headphones or in-ears. I think that'll block out a lot of that noise. So if you're chasing speed, I think you'll be perfectly fine with this. That said, Wallhack does have an even faster pad, the VA005. I'm probably not going to try that because this is kind of like my happy place, at least in terms of speed. So there's that. And also, if you want the limited edition pads, it seems like they mainly prioritize their Scypad or SP series of pads. I'm not an affiliate, but I do want to mention that this pad is available on Amazon, at least in the US and Canada. I just want to mention that because if you want to return this pad because, say, you don't like it or something, in my experience, Amazon returns has been pretty solid. I know some people haven't had that same experience. If you've had a bad experience with Amazon, I'd highly recommend purchasing from somewhere that does have a decent return policy, because glass pads aren't for everyone. There are some more control-oriented glass pads, like for example Wallhack CR005, or the Kanami side that I have, which is sold out, but I'd imagine that the other Kanami pads are going to be pretty similar. Don't quote me on that, I'm not 100% sure. I only have the one Kanami pad, but there are options. If you're happy with your current pad, stick with it. Why not? Like, there's no shame in sticking with what you already have, especially if it keeps you happy. There's a good chance that if I purchase something like the Artisan Hayate Otsu or Yen, I'd stick with that. Who knows? I've never tried those mouse pads, but I've heard very good things. And I do really like my Razer Strider. It has its issues, but I do really like that pad as well. But glass has been kind of my mainstay after trying out the other one. So yeah, that's going to be it. If you have any questions about anything that I've mentioned in this video, feel free to let me know down in the comments below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So yeah, that's going to be my thoughts on these two items here. Kind of took a fresh reviews approach to this, where I've seen him talking about 2 products in one video. And like I said, any questions, let me know. And until next time, bye!